So when approaching playing lead guitar over the blues, many players reach for the pentatonic scale, and by the pentatonic scale, I mean the minor pentatonic scale, and they use that one scale over the whole blues form. This has some serious limitations. Now, even with creative phrasing, it just sounds okay, because what it lacks is the ability to target chord tones of the 1, 4, and 5 chords. So what we're going to do is we're going to begin by using pentatonic scales, because they're probably familiar to you, and it's nice to be able to use something you already know in a slightly different way. So we're going to use pentatonic scales and apply them to the blues to begin with, and then we're going to go a little deeper into other approaches using chord tones. So the first pentatonic scale I want to talk about is the major pentatonic scale. And in my opinion, this is a good scale for the 1 chord of the blues. So if we're going to say, we're going to stick in the key of C. C7 is the 1 chord of the blues, okay? And we're going to play the major pentatonic scale with that over that chord of the blues. Now, as I said earlier, we're connecting these chord tones and scales to CAGED shapes, as I talked about in my CAGED course for JamPlay, where I explored essential chord voicings for the blues. And so I'm just going to reference which CAGED shape each of these major pentatonic scales is coming from, okay? Because it's always good, because the thing is, if you just learn your scales based off of, a big scale chart, you have to memorize it and think of things like, oh yeah, this position is 3 positions up from this one, or I move up, and none of that is really tying you into the chords or the chord tones of what's happening. So this might be a different approach for you, but in the long run, it's going to make a lot more sense. So let's begin with an open C7 chord, okay? In CAGED terminology, this is a C7 shape, okay? You could move this chord around, and it'll be different dominant 7th chords depending on which root note you play. But in this case, C7 chord. You could also just think a C major chord, and then we're adding the 7, the flat 7 on the G string, 3rd fret, the note B flat. The pentatonic scale we're going to put over this chord is the major pentatonic. And the major pentatonic has the following notes: C, D, E, G, A, okay? The C7 chord has the notes C, E, G, and a B flat. So 3 of the tones of the chord, the literal chord tones, are in that major pentatonic scale, which is why it's a great scale to start using over the 1 chord of a blues. 3 chord tones of the chord are in the scale. So over this position of the C7 chord in the open position, here's our C major pentatonic. C, D, E, G, A, C, and then it repeats. Okay, over a C7 chord, C major pentatonic, all right? Now, what's the next position for a C7 chord? In the CAGED system, which works through the word caged, you have your C7, next you need your A7 shape. So if we take an A7 and move it up to C, we have a C7 chord played with an A7 shape at the 3rd fret there. There's our bass note, okay? And in this position, the C major pentatonic scale looks like this. By the way, if you ever forget what the C major pentatonic scale sounds like, it's a very familiar song. My girl, my major pentatonic. Okay, just saying. So, C7 chord based out of an A7 shape, major pentatonic starting on the root of the chord. Okay, so we have a C7 with a major pentatonic, and an A7 with a major pentatonic. Next chord moving through the CAGED system is a G7 shape. So a G7 shape for C7 is this one, okay? Not the most comfortable chord in the world, but as we've explored with CAGED chords, you don't often play the full shape. You just play, smaller 3 or 4 string voicings. So in this G7 shape C7, again, we need to find the C major pentatonic. I have a feeling this pentatonic shape is familiar to you. Okay, now you may have learnt the major pentatonic and thinking of it the way it relates to the minor pentatonic, right? For example, as an A minor chord, if we play A minor pentatonic, over that it has kind of a bluesy sound. If we play major pentatonic in the same position, it has more of like a countrified southern rock, classic rock kind of sound, right? So you're probably familiar with that shape, but maybe you haven't thought of it as coming from the root of the chord shape, which is a G7 cage shape, C7 chord. Again, always come back to the root. Start your scale on the root of the chord, okay? Not just through all 6 strings, because you want your scale to look like and sound like the chord. It's a big difference between the way the pentatonic scale has been taught for the last million years. Dinosaurs used it. Okay, so we have our G7, and then the next shape we need is an E7, which is this one. So this is a C7 played out of an E7 shape. The root note C is at the 8th fret, and this is commonly thought of as the home base for the major pentatonic. So C major pentatonic over the E7 shape. Okay, running from the root up and back. And then, so we have C7 shape, A7 shape, G7 shape, E7 shape. Now we need the last one of the caged, the D7 shape. Okay, so for this one, little trickier because you're going to start your major pentatonic on the D string. Why are you going to do that? Because you want it to look like and sound like the chord that you're playing over, okay? And by the way, we're using dominant sevenths here, but you could do this for just good old-fashioned major chords as well, and because the scale looks exactly like those chords as well, okay? So we have our C7, D7 chord shape, and we're going to start our major pentatonic on the 10th fret of the D string. Coming back to that root again, okay? So that's the C major pentatonic based out of the 5 caged positions. What we're going to do in the practice session is go through that with a metronome so you can start to get these pentatonic shapes under your fingers. You probably already know 1 or 2 of them, maybe you know all 5, but you maybe haven't thought about them in the context of a dominant 7th chord. So we're really trying to think about what our chords are here. We're not just taking a scale and putting it over a whole song. We're thinking about it as each chord passes. So for the 1 chord of the blues, major pentatonic, you want to practice it in 5 positions and obviously in different keys. Let's get into the practice session and play through this major pentatonic with a metronome in the key of C.